Underneath the global phenomenon we now know as Lady Gaga was once a young girl named Stefani Germanotta, born in New York City in 1986. Growing up in a tightly knit Italian-American family, Stefani was introduced to music at a very young age. By the time she was 4 years old, she was already playing the piano, showing signs of a talent that her parents encouraged. Her childhood was steeped in creativity and performance. But she was also surrounded by the traditional values of a Catholic upbringing, attending the Convent of the Sacred Heart, a private all-girls school in Manhattan. While she had opportunities, she didn't necessarily fit the mold. Stefani was often described as eccentric, even awkward, and classmates didn't always understand her flamboyant sense of style or dramatic personality. This early tension between who she really was and the expectations of the world around her would become a recurring theme in her life. By her teenage years, she was performing in school plays, singing at open mics, and studying classical music with the seriousness of someone who knew she was meant for something greater. At just 17, she gained early admission to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, an achievement that only a handful of students in the world earned each year. But even within that prestigious institution, Stefani often felt out of place. She wasn't just interested in the technical side of music, she wanted to break rules, to experiment, to fuse performance art with pop music. While her peers focused on perfecting their craft in traditional ways, she was writing songs about fame, sex, and identity, weaving provocative ideas into catchy melodies. Despite her talent, Stefani's path was not smooth. In fact, it was marked by rejection after rejection. At 19, she was signed briefly to Def Jam Records, only to be dropped just months later before she could even release a single. The blow was devastating, and she found herself back at square one. But instead of giving up, she turned inward, performing in downtown clubs on the Lower East Side, crafting a raw, underground persona that was equal parts glam rock, burlesque, and avant-garde. This was the crucible in which Lady Gaga was born, a persona inspired by the Queen song Radio Gaga, chosen because it reflected both the camp theatrics she loved and the sense of otherness she carried. As Lady Gaga, she leaned into boldness. She dyed her hair platinum blonde, wore increasingly outrageous costumes, and experimented with theatrical stage performances that blurred the line between pop concert and performance art piece. Her early shows caught the attention of producers and fellow artists, and she began writing songs for others, including Britney Spears, Fergie, and even the Pussycat Dolls. But her ambition was bigger than being behind the scenes. She wanted to be the star. That breakthrough finally came in 2008 with the release of her debut single, Just Dance. Initially, the song struggled to gain traction, but through sheer persistence and the growing buzz around her electrifying live performances, it eventually shot up the charts, dominating clubs across America and Europe. Just Dance wasn't just a hit, it was an anthem of escapism in the middle of a global recession. And Gaga's magnetic persona stood out in a pop landscape that was becoming increasingly safe and predictable. Her follow-up, Poker Face, catapulted her to superstardom. The song's hypnotic hook, paired with Gaga's distinctive delivery and daring visuals, made it a worldwide smash. Suddenly, she wasn't just a newcomer, she was redefining what a pop star could look like, sound like, and act like. Unlike many artists who were carefully packaged by their labels, Gaga seemed to be driving her own narrative, combining outrageous fashion, provocative lyrics, and a razor-sharp understanding of fame itself. By the end of her first major era, Lady Gaga was no longer just Stefani from New York, she was an icon in the making. She had carved out a space where she wasn't just accepted for her eccentricities but celebrated for them. Her rise wasn't about fitting in, it was about forcing the world to expand its idea of what a pop star could be. And in doing so, she had only just begun to show the world how many times she could reinvent herself. In the late 2000s, Lady Gaga became synonymous with shock, spectacle, and the art of turning every public appearance into a statement. Her debut album The Fame and its follow-up The Fame Monster not only delivered some of the most infectious pop anthems of the decade but also introduced the world to a performer who was willing to go where few dared. She wasn't just releasing music, she was creating a cultural moment every time she stepped out in public. The wigs were enormous, the shoes defied gravity, and the costumes, or sometimes lack thereof, became the stuff of legend. Who could forget the bubble dress, the red lace ensemble that covered her entire face? Or most infamously, the raw meat dress she wore to the 2010 MTV Video Music Awards? This wasn't random shock for the sake of chaos. Gaga was meticulously crafting a persona that blurred the line between performance art and pop star. She understood how the media worked, how the internet thrived on spectacle, and how audiences craved something more than just another polished singer. Every outrageous look or provocative music video was a calculated move to make her impossible to ignore. For some critics, this made her an easy target. They dismissed her as a gimmick, a flash-in-the-pan provocateur who relied more on costumes than on genuine artistry. But for her fans and cultural commentators, Gaga represented something deeper, a defiant reclaiming of identity, sexuality, and creativity in an industry that often wanted female artists to fit into neat, palatable boxes. Her songs during this era mirrored the spectacle. Tracks like Bad Romance, Telephone, with Beyoncé, and Alejandro were not just pop songs, they were cinematic experiences paired with high-concept, visually stunning videos that played more like short films. Each release pushed the boundaries of what a pop star could do and forced the world to question whether Gaga was simply an eccentric performer or an actual artistic genius redefining the rules of fame. This delicate balance between being laughed at and being revered was exactly where she thrived. The shock factor wasn't just an accessory to her music, it was the music. She built an empire on spectacle. But behind it all was an undeniable talent for songwriting, a powerhouse voice, but a sharp understanding of culture. During the fame and the fame monster, Lady Gaga wasn't just at the center of pop culture, she was pop culture. By the time Artpop arrived in 2013, Lady Gaga had already conquered the world with her blend of shock and spectacle. But the very formula that had made her untouchable suddenly began to turn against her. Artpop was ambitious, experimental, and visually dazzling, and it failed to capture the same cultural grip as her earlier work. The album debuted strong, but its momentum faded quickly, with critics calling it bloated, unfocused, but even self-indulgent. What should have been another chapter of dominance instead became the first real crack in her seemingly unshakable armor. Suddenly, the press that once praised her eccentricity began labeling her as too much, a pop star who had flown too close to the sun. The backlash was swift and merciless. Headlines questioned if Gaga was over, if the world had grown tired of her theatrics, if she was destined to become another cautionary tale of overnight fame and burnout. For an artist who built her identity on being impossible to ignore, the sudden wave of indifference was perhaps even more brutal than outright criticism. She was no longer the center of every conversation, instead, she became a case study in what happens when pop stars push the spectacle too far. Behind the glitter and bravado, Gaga was quietly unraveling. Years of intense touring, physically demanding performances, and the mental toll of constant scrutiny began to catch up with her. She was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, a chronic condition that left her in debilitating pain, often unable to walk or perform. The public saw glimpses of this struggle in her Netflix documentary Gaga, 5'2", which stripped away the costumes and revealed the human being underneath the pop icon. Tears, breakdowns, and vulnerable admissions painted a portrait of someone battling not just the expectations of the industry but her own body and mind. The weight of fame also pressed heavily on her mental health. Gaga spoke openly about her experiences with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, issues that had been compounded by the relentless pressure of staying relevant in an industry that devours its own stars. For an artist who once thrived on excess and performance, these struggles forced her into a period of reflection. The woman behind the wigs and wild costumes, Stefani Germanotta, was breaking through, and she was bruised, battered, and still searching for a way forward. The Artpop era marked a sobering turning point, the moment when Lady Gaga realized that the spectacle couldn't shield her forever. It revealed that beneath the outrageous costumes and provocative performances was a vulnerable human being who could falter, who could be broken, and who could face the terrifying possibility of fading away. But it was also the moment that set the stage for something else entirely, the beginning of her reinvention. After the chaos and collapse of the Artpop era, many expected Lady Gaga to fade into the background, another pop star chewed up and spit out by the industry's relentless cycle of hype. But Gaga, ever the master of reinvention, refused to go quiet. Instead, she shed the glitter and meat dresses, peeled back the layers of spectacle, and reminded the world that behind the theatrics was an artist with rare, undeniable talent. One of the most symbolic moments of this evolution came in 2015 at the Academy Awards. Dressed in a stunning white gown, Gaga performed a tribute to the sound of music, a stripped-down, vocally pristine set that stunned both the audience in the theater and millions watching at home. It was a reminder, to anyone who doubted her, that Lady Gaga wasn't just a pop provocateur, she was a vocalist, a musician, and a performer capable of silencing a room with nothing more than her voice. The applause that night was thunderous, and the narrative began to shift. Her next era, Joanne, released in 2016, was another bold pivot. Gone were the neon wigs and avant-garde bodysuits, replaced by soft pink hats and stripped-down, personal songwriting. The album was named after her late aunt Joanne, whose death had deeply shaped Gaga's family history and emotional world. With this record, she turned inward, exploring themes of loss, healing, and resilience. While it didn't dominate the charts like her earlier pop records, Joanne signaled a new level of authenticity, earning critical respect and showing that Gaga was more than willing to risk commercial appeal for artistic honesty. The era reached its peak during her electrifying Super Bowl halftime show in 2017, a performance that seamlessly bridged her wild early career with her more grounded new self. Leaping from the stadium roof, belting her hits, and weaving in patriotic ballads, Gaga cemented herself as one of the most versatile and commanding live performers of her generation. But perhaps her most dramatic reinvention came not through music, but through acting. Gaga took on the role of Ally in Bradley Cooper's A Star Is Born, a part that seemed almost tailor-made for her, a young singer with extraordinary talent struggling to be seen for her voice rather than her appearance. The film became a global phenomenon, grossing hundreds of millions and earning widespread acclaim. Her chemistry with Cooper was electric, but it was her powerhouse performance of Shallow that dominated the cultural landscape. The song became an anthem, sweeping awards season and ultimately earning her the Academy Award for Best Original Song. For Gaga, who had once been dismissed as a gimmick, standing on that Oscar stage was the ultimate vindication. She wasn't just a pop star, she was a generational artist. At the same time, Gaga began to expand her influence beyond music and film. With the launch of her beauty brand, Haus Labs, she once again blended art, commerce, and empowerment. Unlike many celebrity ventures that felt hollow, Gaga infused her brand with her personal philosophy, makeup not as a mask, but as a tool for self-expression and confidence. It was a natural extension of the identity she had always preached, embracing the freak, the outsider, the dreamer within. In fashion, too, Gaga's arc was undeniable. From once being ridiculed for bizarre red carpet looks, she became a darling of haute couture, frequently topping best-dressed lists and being celebrated as one of the most daring yet elegant figures in the industry. This era of reinvention was not just about survival, it was about transformation. Gaga had proven that she could evolve without losing her essence. Whether standing on stage with nothing but a piano, starring in a major Hollywood film, or building an empire in fashion and beauty, she redefined what it meant to be a modern icon. She was no longer simply shocking audiences into paying attention, she was commanding their respect, their admiration, and their belief that she could do just about anything. With Chromatica, Lady Gaga returned to the world that first made her a star, the pulsing, euphoric universe of dance pop, but this time with a deeper understanding of who she was and what she had endured. Released in 2020, the album wasn't just a nostalgic revival of her early sound, it was a cathartic, futuristic exploration of trauma, healing, and resilience. Gaga wove themes of mental health, recovery, and self-acceptance into neon-soaked beats, reminding listeners that dance floors had always been sanctuaries for the broken and the brave. Songs like Stupid Love and Rain on Me, her explosive collaboration with Ariana Grande, weren't merely club anthems, they were survival anthems. Gaga had grown older, wiser, and more scarred, and Chromatica gave those scars a soundtrack. Today, Gaga stands in a rare space few artists ever achieve. She is both a reigning pop superstar and a respected Hollywood actress. Her performance in A Star Is Born proved her dramatic depth, and her turn as Patrizia Reggiani in House of Gucci cemented her credibility on the silver screen. She became a two-industry powerhouse, commanding arenas with her vocals one moment and earning critical nods on red carpets the next. Unlike many of her peers, Gaga refused to be boxed into a single lane. She existed in the liminal space between pop spectacle and high art, and she thrived there. But what truly defines Gaga's legacy is her philosophy of reinvention. For her, changing eras wasn't just about refreshing a brand or chasing new trends, it was about survival. Each transformation reflected a personal rebirth, a shedding of old wounds, and a reclamation of power. When the industry tried to dismiss her, she pivoted. When personal pain threatened to consume her, she created. Reinvention, for Gaga, was never about vanity, it was about staying alive, staying relevant, and staying true to the evolving truth of her artistry. And so, an enduring question lingers in the air: is Lady Gaga the last true chameleon of modern pop? In an era where most stars cling desperately to a singular image, Gaga continues to shape-shift, oscillating between extremes with authenticity and conviction. Her career suggests that reinvention, when done with honesty and artistry, is not a gimmick but a legacy. She stands not just as a performer, but as a cultural mirror, reflecting both the chaos of fame and the resilience of those who dare to survive. Whether she's wearing a meat dress, a pink cowboy hat, or Valentino couture, Gaga has proven that no costume, no era, no reinvention can ever overshadow the core truth: Lady Gaga is one of the last artists who can still surprise us. And perhaps, in the age of predictability, that is her greatest legacy of all.